Hello and welcome. I'm Eric Gao, and here's what happened this week. Friday marked 1 full month since a major earthquake struck off the eastern county of Hualien. That area is still dealing with the aftermath, including a series of aftershocks that continues to cause damage. Our reporter Reese Ayers was at the entrance to Tooco National Park in Hualien, reporting on the conditions there.
Well, Eric, this whole area is still in a process of recovery, particularly Tooco National Park, that tourism gem, one of Taiwan's top attractions, and it's quickly becoming the symbol of the destruction caused by that quake on April 3rd. Now, just over a kilometer behind me, up behind this gate, is the Shakadang Trail, a famous walking path, famous for its crystal blue waters. If you've been to Tooco, you may have walked that path. That trail was where some of the most dramatic landslides occurred and where several of those 18 deaths were reported. Further up inside the gorge, the small settlement of Tianxiang, all businesses there now closed indefinitely. For now, this is as close as we can get to Tooco, and that's because a fresh series of landslides caused by aftershocks and heavy rains have forced authorities to close roads once again.
That was Reese Ayers reporting from Tooco National Park in Hualien County. And as we just heard, Hualien relies heavily on tourism for its economy. The Transport Ministry and the Tourism Bureau, they are pitching in with efforts to get visitors back to that region. Tiffany Wong was at one of their promotional events.
This is a temporary market in the halls of a Taipei metro station, and all the vendors are from Hualien. That's the epicenter of a magnitude 7.2 earthquake that rocked the country last month. Now, these vendors are hoping to boost the county's tourism industry and remind people of the products and sites that the county is known for, like rose quartz, which is found on the beaches of Hualien. 最新生意怎么样？
差很多。自从地震之后，花莲少了许多的游客，那现在比较平稳了。那希望大家能够再去花莲旅游，其实还蛮安全的。谢谢。
Hualien is home to the largest indigenous population in Taiwan, and vendors like these hope to showcase cultural products that can't be found anywhere else. 请问你们产品的特色是什么？
我们主要打的特色就是马告，就是珊瑚礁。我们太鲁阁族是原住民最常用的珊瑚礁。
The Transport Ministry announced over $160 million in funds to help Hualien recover, and some of that will be going to tourism initiatives, like offering subsidies on tour packages and hotels. Now, vendors will be here in Taipei for the next 2 days, but they're hoping that when they return to Hualien, they'll bring a few more tourists back with them. Kama Shui and Tiffany Wong in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
China has announced that it would loosen cross-strait trade rules and partially ease restrictions on tourism. Now, those moves were met with caution here in Taiwan. John Van Trieste reports.
Good news for the farmers of these pomelos. After almost 2 years, China says it will reopen its market to pomelos grown in Taiwan. Nearly 5,000 metric tons of the citrus fruit made its way to Chinese store shelves in 2021. But on August 3, 2022, China suddenly closed the door. The official explanation was bugs and excess pesticides. But many saw the visit hours earlier of U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to Taipei as the real trigger. That visit infuriated Beijing, which sees Taiwan as its own and doesn't like officials from other governments coming to Taiwan. The decision to reverse this ban came during a meeting Sunday between Chinese customs officials and a visiting delegation of Taiwanese lawmakers from the main opposition Kuomintang. There's no date yet for the ban being lifted, but Taiwanese farmers are already happy.
可以多一个行销的通路的话，那对我们文旦柚农它相对的是有一些正面的帮助。
And that's not all. 2 types of fish from Taiwan are also going to be let back into China's market. Taiwan's tourism industry, hit by Chinese bans on its citizens visiting the country, is getting a boost too. After the Taiwanese delegation's visit, Beijing said it will let tourists from its coastal Fujian province travel to Taiwan's nearby Mazu Islands. And residents of 20 Chinese cities will once more be able to apply to visit Taiwan.
福建省有4-5千万的居民，这样子的一个旅客能量，对于台湾各县市的观光来说，都是一场及时雨。
Not everyone's totally satisfied. The Mainland Affairs Council, which charts Taiwan's China policy, says China shouldn't limit visitors to the Mazu Islands to residents of just one province. But the members of the delegation who got these concessions from China see their work as a success.
此行我们虽然是国民党的一小步， 却是在断线8年以后两岸的一大步。我们此行带回来给台湾人民一个丰硕的成果。
There's caution too, though, with many doubting Beijing's announcements are solely motivated by goodwill.
中国共产党在对外谈判的时候，特别是跟他的对手谈判的时候，往往强调一手硬一手软，好像把一个恩惠做给了在野的国民党，可是呢，给民进党更大的这个压力。
Whatever Beijing's intentions, there are signs that it's prepared to use whatever it takes to realize its ultimate goal, bringing Taiwan under its control. Patrick Chen and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
On Wednesday, thousands of people took to the streets of Taipei for Labor Day, with unions demanding more from the government. John was on the scene.
There's still 20 days till the new president and cabinet take office, and already they're being lampooned. At this May 1st Labor Day rally in Taipei, activists dressed like incoming President Lai Ching-te and his pick for labor minister danced to a rap about what they say are their unfriendly labor policies, cutting pensions and vacation days. Labor Day protests are an annual tradition here in front of the presidential office. But this year, things are a little different. The Democratic Progressive Parties won a third consecutive term in charge of the presidency. That's something that no parties managed to do since the first direct election in 1996. These protesters want to make sure this third term won't just be more of the same. The government has defended its record on labor rights over the past 2 terms. In a Facebook post, Premier Chen Jianren highlighted continued raises of the minimum wage and over $8 billion in appropriations for pensions and labor insurance. But there's skepticism here on the ground.
当年蔡英文政府他所提出的是这个应该要让基本工资调升至3万，但很明显的是，在这个政权要连续执政底下之前，都还没有做到这件事情，所以才只能说他们连续8年有调涨这个基本工资，但是离执政这个当时承诺这个3万元，其实基本上是跳票的。
Union reps from across Taiwan, spanning fields from medicine to railway workers, have put together 5 demands for the incoming government. One is higher wages and more overtime, plus a transparent way to make sure women and men earn the same. Second, they want workers protected in situations like when one company buys out another. Third, they want to make forming unions easier and, controversially, for public servants like firefighters to be allowed unions, something not currently allowed. Fourth is protections for retirement and pensions. And fifth is better conditions for nurses and other medical workers, who they say are overworked and unfairly treated. While the speakers here are putting pressure on the incoming administration, they're also equally unhappy with all Taiwan's major political parties.
去年年底呢，3党的候选人都有对我们劳工团体呢做出了很多的承诺，劳工政策的承诺，包括企业合并要经过工会的同意，包括退休要保障。 包括工会的头主，3个党的候选人呢，都有跟我们劳工来做承诺。
And with that, the mass of workers sets off on a march through downtown Taipei, from the presidential office to the legislature and back. For most in Taiwan, Labor Day is just another day off work. But for the hundreds or maybe even thousands of laborers gathered here, there's a sense that when it comes to workers' rights, there's no time for resting. Here, several hundred meters in front of the presidential office, the message of these workers is clear. The president may be about to change, but the demands he's going to face from workers aren't going anywhere. Chris Ma and John Van Trieste in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Labor protests weren't just held in Taipei. Earlier, medical workers at a hospital in Chiayi City in southern Taiwan, they staged a walkout over stalled salary negotiations. Meetings between the union and the hospital have been dragging on for months as the two sides try to agree on fair pay. Tiffany Wong has more.
A lunchtime walkout. Over 100 medical personnel at this hospital in Chiayi City in southern Taiwan are demanding higher pay and a plan to hire more staff. The hospital union says that stagnant wages have caused an alarming number of staff to quit and warned this could seriously affect medical care.
开刀房已经有超过30几个的护理师离职了。如果乡亲们要来开刀，可能会一直排，甚至只有医生 没有护理师来照顾大家。
The protest comes after 10 rounds of negotiations over the last 6 months failed to meet the union's demand of a 6% salary increase, instead only resulting in a 1 to 2% raise.
其他医院的调的薪资都比这些还高，那我们觉得应该基本上要调到6%才足够。
They said they've seen the hospital invest in renovating its facilities, but not in its workers. But the hospital says that its pay and benefits are higher than the industry average, and that they have brought on new staff to replace those who have left.
会跟工会去讨论的。那我就是说，我先让大家知道，医院其实很照顾同仁啊。那我们的整个薪资福利也都是这个偏上。
Taiwan's medical sector has been facing growing dissatisfaction among workers, who point to issues like low salaries and long working hours. Now these workers in Jiayi want to make it clear that retaining skilled talent comes at a price. Howard Zhang and Tiffany Wong for TaiwanPlus.
The latest data shows that Taiwan's wealth cap has grown sharply over the past 30 years. The government says the wealthiest people hold far, far more assets than the poorest. John is back, crunching the numbers to explain why.
For 55-year-old single mother Ms. Zhu, the fact that average household wealth in Taiwan is around $500,000 doesn't mean much. She's among the 71% of families that fall below this average. Some days, her sweet potato stand struggles to pull in even $30.
因为现在的利润不到一半，下雨天也不能卖，然后天气热，你看像天气这么热，没生意啊。
Not all those who fall below the average are in quite such tough circumstances, but wealth inequality is a fact of Taiwanese society, and new government data shows it's grown greatly in recent decades. One way to see this is to compare the earnings gap between the richest 20% and the poorest 20% of society. In 1991, the richest made around 17 times more than the poorest, but by the end of 2021, that was up to 67 times more. Researchers say a person's occupation and economic trends factor into who rises in the wealth ratings and who falls behind.
During the pandemic in 2021, remote work opportunities boosted exports of electronic components and the manufacture and export of ICT equipment. But the service and other traditional industries focused on domestic demand performed very poorly. This is reflected in the growing income gap between workers in different sectors.
There are countries where the situation's worse. One way to see this is to look at what's known as the Gini coefficient, a number between 0 and 1 used to show how unequal a society is. 0 means perfect equality, while 1 means total inequality. With a 2021 score of 0.606, Taiwan is more equal than the UK, France, or Japan, to name a few examples. But back in 1991, Taiwan had a much lower score of 0.47. Taiwan's net and gross national wealth has risen even through the end of the pandemic. But there are still plenty of people in Taiwan, people like sweet potato vendor Ms. Zhu, who aren't benefiting from the country's overall prosperity. Eason Chen and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
First quarter economic growth hit 6.5%, the highest in 11 years. The Statistics Bureau says this was driven by strong exports with huge demand for equipment for emerging technologies like AI. The government has raised its annual growth prediction to 3.57% off the back of this Q1 performance. But some analysts are warning that the super growth may be short-lived if the AI bubble bursts. At least 37,000 Taiwan passports were lost in 2023. The country's foreign ministry says tens of thousands of passports are reported lost each year, and that number is growing. Just last month, authorities busted a fraud ring that was illegally selling Taiwanese passports to Chinese nationals. Officials say it's getting harder for them to tell if cases of lost passports are genuine or fraudulent. Thanks for joining us for Here's What Happened. Before we go, it's Star Wars Day. Check out these corgis all dressed up at a Moscow exhibition dedicated to the movie series. May the 4th be with you. I'm Eric Gao. I'll be back tomorrow with more stories from this week.